Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Three Nails Information Security podcast. I'm Vincent Mintz, owner and founder of Three Nails InfoSec, joined today by our guest, Howard Holton, who is a COO at Giga Ohm. Talking offline with Howard, found a really few interesting bits that we're going to discuss today. So before we do, Howard, would you just introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm happy to be here, Vince. Thanks for inviting me. I'm Howard Holton. I'm the COO and CTO at Giga Ohm. I've been at Giga Ohm, which is an analyst firm. You might think of another G company when I mention analyst firms. You can think of us very similar to them. The difference is, one, we're much smaller, but two, all of my analysts are practicing engineers, so we all have a deep technical background. Me, I got started when I was 11. I wrote a piece of software for law offices, then became a Novell administrator. And at the time, you kind of rolled your own security, especially outside of like the enterprise space. Cybersecurity wasn't really a thing, not as a dedicated profession outside of the absolute most massive companies and then some kind of research organizations. Um, I was an engineer for Verizon. I was an engineer for WellPoint. I was an architect. And then I kind of transitioned almost 20 years ago into the CXO space, where I've been a CIO, a CISO, a CTO for various organizations, ending with Ream Manufacturing last 2.5 years ago. I was their CIO and CISO. They're a multi-billion-dollar, global manufacturing company. At Giga Ohm, I'm the primary kind of advisor, and I run the advisory and field CTO business. That's kind of my baby, where we help companies by helping them build a IT strategy, security strategy, data strategy, those sort of things, and then do strategic planning. Right? How do I take a strategy and actually turn that into action? What are the things I should be focused on? And my focus really is to help companies do something that makes sense for their business, not something that makes sense for kind of everyone, or something where it's consultative. I'm not a consultant. I'm an advisor. I got no bucket of hours to sell you. Right? Everything is super targeted and super tight because I always hated that when I was a customer. I always hated this. I spent a bunch of money. I'm not sure how fit it is for me, how fit for purpose, and that sort of thing. So that's really what I do. That's really kind of my philosophy, right? My philosophy is be real targeted in the things that you do, be real prescriptive in the things that you do, and don't take on too much.
With that said, that reminds me of the first question we'll be discussing today, which I had never really heard this said before, but you had in quote said good cybersecurity should actually produce less network traffic. Start by telling us a little bit about that philosophy, or I don't know what you would
Sure,
call it, I guess, but that concept.
sure. So the biggest problem we have is false positives. We don't have false negative problems. We have false positives, right? We get buried in alerts. We get buried in what we believe to be signal, right? The whole game is
Yeah.
how do we separate the signal from the noise? So the goal really should be let's reduce the total signal, noise and all, right? If I can drop the floor out of the amount of signal that I receive, then false positives don't hurt me so bad, right? If I can slide a comma the correct direction, then false positives don't hurt me so bad. Then I can really concentrate on reducing the false positives and get that down to a manageable kind of number, right? And so when we're looking at kind of where should we invest time, a really good kind of rubric to look at is, does this help me reduce the noise and thus reduce those false positives, reduce the number of alerts that I get in a day? Does not mean turn things off. It means reduce the total corpus of noise, which includes the signal as well, right? So I can that much faster get to the things that I really need to focus on, where I really need to put my attention.
How do organizations accomplish that specific task? I mean, I feel like we're in a in an industry right now that's like very focused on like it's very saturated with tools and
Sure.
information and things. So how I mean, it seems so like counter, to what I what I experience in everyday marketing in this industry that is
Yeah, no, it
cybersecurity.
absolutely is,
So
right? It's absolutely
yeah.
counter to kind of where we've been going. Where we've been going is how do I get to the better signal? Like that's where the industry's been
Hmm.
going for forever, right? How do I get to the better signal? How do I get to the better signal? How do I get to the better signal? And the reality is, we've done the worst thing we could possibly do in cybersecurity. We ignored the network. That's what we kind of did, right? We kind of went, this is a transport mechanism, and that's really its function is transport mechanism. And so we'll put all of our security stuff on as close to the application as we can, as close to the data as we can, as close to the kind of higher level functions, and didn't realize that the best way to actually affect all of this was reduce the traffic on the road. Right? We looked at all the on-ramps. We looked at all the off-ramps. We looked at every store on the side of the freeway and ignored the infrastructure itself. And so the best way to deal with it is start looking at your infrastructure. And by infrastructure, I mean the roads. By infrastructure, I mean the network. Right? Start looking at how do I reduce the traffic on the network so that I can get that down to what was before kind of unrestricted chaos down to something that is manageable. That does not mean we eat the elephant all at once, right? That doesn't mean we're doing an end-to-end microsegmentation project, we're doing end-to-end micro firewalls, we're doing end-to-end, no. Let's start with, and I do like microsegmentation, so let's start with microsegmentation, but let's start on the things that are at core. Let's start at the things that are really critical. Let's start with things that are really important, right? We don't protect everything to an equal degree. So let's start with those things we've already identified as center ring, right? And let's see, can we reduce the noise down so much the signal starts outweighing the noise?
Okay. Yeah, it's going to take me this podcast to really grasp that concept. Yeah, I feel like that noise, I'm kind of correlating it to like overcomplication in a sense. And I feel like something that companies want is, in the end, is just like comprehensive security. Excuse me, something, really capable and able to do the thing and do it well. So how do you feel like companies can sort of balance the need for comprehensive security with the risk of overcomplicating processes and overcomplicating objectives and whatnot?
Sure. So what I would start with is, what is your minimum acceptable efficacy? It's not 100%. 100% is not reasonable, right? So how do you have a reasonable conversation about what our minimum required efficacy is, right? And then we can also then go, okay, cool. So if I give you 45 tools, can you maintain the minimum level of efficacy in 45 tools? There's absolutely customers that can do that. There's absolutely organizations that can do that. But that is the average number of tools that enterprises have just for security. 45. It's the average number.
Wow.
Right. So think about that for a minute, right? If I say my efficacy is in the high 90s, I have to be 97, 98, 99% effective, and I have a team of 6 people, how am I able to maintain 97% efficacy in 45 tools? Right? And then when you realize that, you start to go, oh, well, obviously I can't. Cool. So the reality is you're probably 99% effective with 3 or 4 of those 45 tools. So how many of those tools do I really need? How many of those tools really help push my overall posture efficacy up? It's probably not as many as you would think. Right? And so we've overcomplicated because this is an industry based off FUD. Right? Fear, unease, and distrust. It's based off this kind of fundamental like sense of fear-based FOMO. If you don't do this thing, you're going to get attacked tomorrow. Well, you're not. Right? That is unlikely. If you were going to get attacked tomorrow because you didn't do this thing, the attackers are already at the door. How do you know the attackers are at the door? Right? That doesn't mean we turn things off. That doesn't mean we ignore the easy things. That doesn't mean we skip over hygiene. Right? But the second thing that you need to keep in mind after what is your minimum acceptable efficacy and how do you get there is, right, prevention is better than cure. What are the things we can do to increase our efficacy from a prevention standpoint rather than a cure standpoint? Right? If I spend $1 million on tools to stop my users from answering questions wrong, Could I not get a better result with $100,000 in user training? Right? What have I done to validate that that's the best use of the dollars, that that's the best use of the time? And I don't care if you spend $25 million on all the tools in the world and $0 training your users, your efficacy is not going to be good. Users are still the biggest problem, right? Hygiene is still the biggest problem. Over provisioning, still a massive problem. Lack of global consistency, huge problem. Right? Why is it so popular to impersonate the voice of your CEO? Because you don't have any good hygiene there. Right? Because statistically, companies are non-hygienic when it comes to managing that communication channel. Right? It's funny. My daughter works for my company. She's 23. She's a CS student. And we had an intern position open. She applied for it. I didn't ask her to apply. I didn't support her applying. She applied to it. Anyhow, she got the job. She immediately, like her second day, she goes, "Dad, who is this Ben person? And I think it's our CEO. Why would he be texting me?" And I'm like, "Oh, he wouldn't." And she goes, "What?" I said, "He wouldn't. It's not a text from our CEO. It's a common scam. What did you do?" She said, "Well, I ignored it. I asked you." Right. It's a common scam. The CEO does not reach out to an intern and say, "Hey, I need you to do something for me." Right? They reach through layers and say, "I need this thing done," and then magically it happens. But they don't know who actually does it. Right? That basic hygiene is not present in most organizations. And even within my household, before my daughter started the job, I didn't go, "Hey, like you need to be aware of these 7 common scams." Right? I think in 2024, we just assume people are paying attention. But they're not. We're paying attention, but we're also bombarded by the updates. We're bombarded by the news, right? We're in this echo chamber that is constantly updated with cyber info. So how do we get it out there? How do we just spend a few minutes teaching our users? None of them want to make that mistake. No one wants to be on the hook for spending $5,000 on gift cards on behalf of the CEO that didn't actually happen.
What are some recommendations you can make for organizations to be proactive about their hygiene rather than reactive?
Sure. We'll start with the basics and make the basics basic. Right? The CEO will not reach out to you and ask you ever to get last minute gift cards. It's never going to happen. It doesn't happen. It's not real. Right? If you are not specifically tasked with that job, it will never come up as a surprise. I don't care who it is inside the organization. Right? Like just start with the basics and really just focus on simplifying it. And the basics really should come across as one message for one point. Not let's put together a comprehensive email that goes through the top 20, pieces of fraud, the top 20 most common scams. No, one email, one scam. Space them out. Right? Give people time to read it and digest and understand it. Right. I also find that oftentimes we do these cyber tests, right? So we have people go through a whole course. Okay, cool. We just did our cyber awareness training. We do no reinforcement, and then we just go, cool, now we've tested, and we found they failed. Well, of course they did. Right? Of course they did. Yeah. Right? Go back to school. Like put yourself in that headspace. You studied like crazy for that test on Friday. If you'd have waited another week, like after that test on Friday and asked me all those questions over again, half of them I'm going to miss. I'm training for the next test on the next Friday. You know what I mean? I'm not retaining that information, and it's bombarded. But you give me one thing, hey, just keep in mind the CEO is never going to ask you that question. The 3 people inside the organization that actually communicate with the CEO, where it might be reasonable for him to go, hey, I do want to get a gift for this customer that I just saw. They already know that. They've already been in those conversations. They already know that. They've had one-on-ones with the CEO, and they can always ask and go, hey, your number's in my phone. So when I receive that text message that says, hey, this is your CEO, and the number doesn't match, they already know that's not the number. They already know the CEO's phone number. right? So yeah, sure. If you have people in your org where that applies, they already know that it applies. The message is still fine, right? Same for
Yep.
every other kind of scam, right?
Hmm.
IT will never ask you for your password. If your organization is one where you go, well, actually, then step 2 is IT needs to never ask anyone for their password,
Yeah.
right? Maybe it's step
Love it.
1. Step 1 is IT needs to never ask anyone for the password. Step 2 is you can now send out a message saying IT will never ask anyone for their password,
Mm-hmm.
right? Step 3 is if you're in an organization where IT asks for your password, no, just say I forgot it. Please reset my password, right?
Love it. Yeah.
Don't give
Yeah.
anyone your password. And if the person at IT goes, "Ooh, I can't reset your password," then you're probably not talking to your IT department.
Mm. When you said hygiene too, I know you're kind of really emphasizing. It sounds like some format of training. Do you think that hygiene goes past just sort of training as well? Do you feel
Absolutely.
like it? Okay.
Right? It
Yeah.
absolutely goes well beyond it, right? Like
Hmm.
hygiene is also reviewing the things you did yesterday to see how you can improve them tomorrow or today, right? So like ACLs, how many times have you reviewed how you have your ACL set, right? Your access control lists, the membership thereof, right? How often do you audit any of those processes, much less audit the actual information?
Mm.
Right? Like you have to assume if you're a large company, 500 or more people, you've made some changes internally. You moved someone from department A to department B. You promoted
Mm.
someone from job A to job B. Maybe that was the same department and similar responsibilities, just more of them. But if you ever move someone from project A to project B, did you remove their rights to project A?
Mm.
Right? How much are you over provisioning everyone because it's easy? Like these are
Right.
basic hygiene steps.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm.
Yes, they are complex. I don't want to diminish the cost of doing these things. Doesn't mean you don't do them though. Right? Because again, if I can reduce the noise, I reduce the attack surface, that combination leads me to a place where security is manageable. It's not perfect. Manageable doesn't mean
Well
perfect,
said.
right?
Well said.
But manageable.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to get to. It
Mm.
needs to be manageable.
Talk to me about exceptions in security because I feel like
Oh,
something I run into often,
I love
is
that.
yeah,
Yeah, I love it.
yeah.
And I
Go
love
ahead, run.
exceptions in security because exceptions in security means you don't have security. That's what it means, right? Exceptions in
Mm,
security tend to go along with the most impactful accounts, right? The
mm,
CEO doesn't want MFA because MFA is difficult. Cool, then we don't have security. We'll just turn it off for everybody then. Well, wait, don't turn it off for everybody. I know, but the CEO is the account that has the most value. So if I turn it off for the CEO, what's the point of having it for everybody else? Well, okay, but the CEO will have it, but their administrative assistant won't. Cool, same exact issue,
mm.
right? So if you have
Yeah.
exceptions, then you've turned off that security, right? Same thing. If you have multiple tools for the same thing, and some tools apply over here and some tools apply over here, then you also don't have security,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
I need to have one XDR. I need to have one EDR, right? I need to have one of whatever the thing is. Otherwise, I don't have global management. Otherwise, I don't have global visibility. And I guarantee there will be assets, people, process, things that fall between the cracks. Right? Well, why doesn't that have EDR on it? Well, because I thought it was yours. Well, no, I thought it was yours. No, it's not really mine. It's not really mine. Oh, okay, it belongs to somebody we don't even know. Right? Versus everything is protected by these 5 tools. This is our stack. Everything gets the same security stack. There are no exceptions. Everything gets it. Now, here's the exception, because this is the one place where there has to be an exception, and that is OT. We talk about IT, we talk about OT, right? OT is the technology that you do not own. That doesn't mean you don't have ownership of it. That means you do not have management control to the admin level, to the root level, right? Even if you've paid for it, if you are locked out as an administrator and you cannot apply the equal and consistent security stack, then it is OT. You see that as an invader. You need to treat it just like your body treats an infection. You surround it and you protect yourself from it. You treat it like an interloper. You treat it like an outsider. You treat it like it is always compromised. You never, ever, ever trust it.
That's great. I mean, that's a good like philosophy to keep in general, especially a lot of those devices come with hardware backdoors or just software backdoors, or I mean, we hear about it all the time. Camera
Well,
systems having.
yeah. Well, it's also, you're not making a judgment, right? You're not saying this vendor isn't keeping up. You're not saying this one's better than this one. You're simply saying, I don't have control over it, and therefore I treat it like it's a compromised asset. I cannot trust it because I can never confirm it. And even if I can confirm it today, I can't confirm it tomorrow. There's 30 CVEs a day, right? So I can't confirm it tomorrow. Therefore, it's always untrusted. It's never trusted. And I'm not making a judgment about you, Mr. Vendor. I'm not making a judgment about you, Mr. Partner. I'm not making judgment about you at all. This is our policy, and our policy applies equally. Right?
Yep. Makes sense.
And then it's a no judgment zone, right? It's not, the point isn't to judge. The point isn't to grade. The point is I apply policy. And my policy says you're either IT, in which case I own you at the root level, or you're OT. I do not own you at all. I do not own you at the root level, and thus I treat you like you're a foreign asset.
That's good. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You shared with me previous to that cybersecurity is much like a team sport. I think at the time when we had discussed, you'd sort of liken it to the unavoidable global currency market. Tell us how it sort of relates. I'd love to hear that again.
Yeah. So I'm a firm believer that there are only two things every company participates in, whether you want to or not. Remember, you can say that product's not performing. I don't like the competitors. They're kicking our butts. We're done. We just discontinue the product. You can absolutely say we're not seeing the success we want in that market. It's too hard to compete, and not compete in that market. But there is some market you have to compete in because it's a business, and that's how that works. Right? I have a product. I need to sell the product. I have to collect money for it. So you are always participating in the global currency market of whatever country you're in. Whatever currencies you're accepting, you're part of that market. You can't affect their fluctuations. Those happen completely third party to you, but you are subject to them. Right? The only other thing that is like that is cybersecurity. Regardless of how good a team you field, right, to defend, there is always an opponent. Even if the opponent's not noticing you, even if they're paying no attention to you, there's still an opponent. You're still being attacked all the time. It's just automated most of the time. Fine. So they fielded a JV team, right? But they don't have to. The second the JV team starts getting hits, you know what they do? They bring in the varsity. Then they bring in the college team. Then they bring in the major leagues. They can move much faster than you can. So you really need to think about what kind of team do I need to field? Because you participate. You can't just suddenly say, you know what? I don't want to play in this cybersecurity thing. I'm not doing cybersecurity anymore. And the problem goes away. Problem doesn't go away. Exactly the same way as saying, I don't like how much the yuan fluctuates. I'm not going to compete, but I'm going to continue to sell products in China. Doesn't work that way. Right? You absolutely have to compete in those things. So you cannot at any point say, well, I mean, I'm only going to pay up to a middle school level team. That should protect us. No. That's only going to protect you against another middle school team. And the second the opponent finds out that you've only got a middle school team, but you're protecting varsity assets, they're going to field the varsity team. They're going to throw a college team at you. They're going to throw pros at you. Easy pickings. Right? And that's why we see schools constantly getting attacked. That's why we see public organizations constantly getting attacked. That's why we see manufacturing in the private sector, the number one attack space is manufacturing, right? Because they haven't invested. And so they're fielding JV teams, but they pay out like their varsity, right? They pay out like their college teams. Makes them a much easier target versus, I mean, if I go after financial services, a big bank, I mean, that's the big game, right? That's the Yankees at their peak, right? That's Tom Brady's Patriots in their third or fourth win, just walking up to that fifth one, right? You got to work hard to beat that team, right?
Right.
But you know, you want to play against a AA farm team, and you're the Yankees, no problem. Wipe it every time, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you have to think about, and that doesn't mean everybody has to be the Yankees, right? Because again, if you're protecting assets that are the assets of a AA ball team, field a AA ball team, right?
Yep.
Don't overspend, but it does mean you have to properly think about that. You have to properly consider that as a piece of risk.
I think the increase, of I know this is sort of off topic, but you're speaking to like high level adversaries, and I think that with AI sort of emerging, that we're going to see the level of a sophisticated attacker, maybe the lower skill attackers, their skill sets are going to appear to probably increase with the explosion of AI and tools accessible to them, and so do you envision AI transforming or disrupting the cybersecurity industry significantly in the coming years? Obviously, I think that's an obvious question, but maybe how do you see?
Well, so here's what's going to be neat, right? Is today most attacks begin with some sort of script until you're identified as a target, right? The myth of the kid in the basement, the hacker in the basement, is just that, it's a myth. The reality is the successful groups are run like businesses. They carry P&L. They do risk benefit analysis. They make proposals on who they're going to attack, and they vie for resources exactly the same way we run projects in enterprises. Right? We don't get to fund everything we want. We don't get to buy everything we want. We have a limited budget. We're going to put the budget where we get the best return. They do the exact same thing. So what's neat is a lot of the scripting tools are near enough to free. They're so commoditized, they don't really have a cost to them. So you can kind of run them as much as you want. AI is a little different in that there is a cost to it, right? Even if you have a botnet and that compute is relatively free, AI compute is far from it. It takes a lot of money to get a number of tokens per second to make that worth it, right? And so one of the things you can start looking for today is start looking for a shift that lends itself to AI. If you're subject to a lot of phishing and all of a sudden that phishing starts to look like really good use of language, whereas before it had common misspellings, it was obviously written by someone that doesn't speak your native language or the language the email's in, and all of a sudden that's massively improved, that's likely the result of someone using AI. Now, one of the things to think about, and there's no research to support this for the record, this is all brand new, is if yesterday you had the standard botnet stuff and today you have what looks like similar traffic patterns, but the quality is improved due to AI, that means somebody's spending money. That's not free anymore. That's probably a sign that you've been noticed. It's probably a sign that someone thinks you're a good target, right? It's probably a sign you should wake up and pay attention. Now, over time, AI is going to be more and more and more pricing commoditized. It's going to be cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to do and cheaper to run. And that's going to be way more ubiquitous. And that means all the easy stuff that we've been able to look at and identify, that goes away. Right? If your spam filter right now looks for common misspellings and uses that as a ranking system, that's going to go away. Right? Which means we need to be far, far better at what we do, because we're going to start to see attackers that are going to start to look more and more like humans and less like bots. They'll still be bots. It'll still be commodity, but it's going to make the job harder. So that means today you really need to start learning what these tools are capable of. You really need to start learning, what does AI look like? How do we leverage it? Where can we use it to help cut down on the things that we focus on to make sure that we're focused in the right place at the right time so that we can help manage security, right? Security cannot be solved. It's always going to be a problem. There is no such thing as a future where all the code is perfect, right? If all the code was perfect, there's also no future where all the configurations are perfect. Okay, so quick advice,
Right.
Because everybody's going to walk away with something, otherwise the stuff isn't valuable, right? Start using AI today. Make sure you're not feeding a public model data that's helping to train it. So pay for, even a public service, pay for ChatGPT on the API level. Their commitment is not to learn. Again, if you don't trust them, pick somebody else. If you don't trust anybody, I don't know what to tell you. You gotta figure this stuff out, right? Feed it configs, have it write documentation. I guarantee you have things that aren't documented in your organization, right? When you have all the configs, feed all the configs back into it and tell it to start building diagrams. It's amazing. I started using GPT for this. I can describe an architecture and have it output a UML that I can drop into a visualization tool and have an instant diagram.
Wow, that's
right?
Amazing.
You can have it look for logical inconsistencies. You can have it reduce rules. There's all sorts of things you can do today to try to make your job easier, right? Where do I have rules inside my firewall with 1,200 rules that conflict? Guaranteed they're there. No one is perfect. Right? How can I start leveraging it today to see how it's going to benefit us long before the vendors figure out how to integrate it? But they will. And that way, the second the vendor has it integrated, you're aware of the pluses and minuses. You know where you need to keep a human in the loop. You know where you can trust it and where you shouldn't. And all of a sudden, you're now an expert ball player. When someone upgrades your equipment, you're ready for it. You're good to go.
It's good. I think you're one of the first of my guests to recommend using AI. Like, get out there and use it. I think most of the CXOs are precautionary. They're saying, I don't know if we're ready. I'm nervous. Is our data at risk? And we're going to be answering some of those questions actually pretty soon here with another AI expert.
I'll say, yes, your data is absolutely at risk. No, you're absolutely not ready for it. But that doesn't mean you don't use it. That means the opposite. Right? You don't walk up to the baseball diamond for the first time and go, I'm not even stepping out to the plate until I'm ready to play at the college level. Right? You can't do that. But you can say, I'm not going to play any college players until I'm ready at the college level. I need to get 10,000 games under my belt before I'm ready at the college level. Right? So what you start with is you go, AI is here. It's not going away. AI has a bunch of use cases. That's not going to change. There's going to be more of them. The expectation is going to be that there will be more of them. So today, what can I do? Well, today I can start with things that are where I've mitigated the risk as much as possible. Right? So number one, if it's a free service, then you are the product. So you can't trust it with any data whatsoever. Right? Number two, not all data has the same value. Start with stuff that's low risk. Right? All of us can think through that. All of us can go, cool. So don't put a credit card in there. Right. Maybe don't put a social security number in there. Don't put an address. Right. Don't put your real name. Don't put anybody's real name. Right. Like, just start with basic data hygiene. And if you're not certain that your company is equipped to deal with that, there we go, right back to that thing we talked about, 15 minutes ago. Send an email, 1 tip a day. Right? When using AI, do some of the following. 1 tip. That's it. Just 1 a day. And everyone can catch those.
I think it's good to encourage it too, because I think everybody's doing it anyway. And they're probably dropping spreadsheets and things that they probably shouldn't be. So I liked your bit of information about GPT using the API. I think that was a nifty little trick that actually I wasn't even aware of that as well. So, well, Howard, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and I know you have one yourself. Do you want to share a little bit about it, where people can hear you or communicate with you?
Sure. The best way to find out what I'm doing is follow me on LinkedIn. So I'm Howard Holton on LinkedIn. You can't miss the beard, right? Easy to find. That's Holton for those listening on audio. I have a podcast. I have 3 podcasts, actually. I have Discovering Disruptions in Tech. where we introduce people to a new tech concept, talk about why it's important, what's happening in the space, what the problem is that it solves. We have the good, the bad, and the techie, where we talk about tech trends and kind of how to think about them and how to look at them. And then I have an executive-based podcast, which is really for CIOs and CTOs and CISOs, right? How to manage, run teams, how to manage budgets, how to do all the kind of nitty-gritty there. Also, what's new in tech and that sort of stuff, right? You see a common theme called the sweet spot. But yeah, that's the easiest thing to do. If I'm in your city and you want to meet, let me know. If you want to chat on LinkedIn, I'm happy to do that. If anybody's got questions, just reach out to me. I'm a pretty open guy.
And for anybody listening, within the next week or so, Howard is probably going to be traveling in your city, considering how many conferences he's going to be going to. So definitely try to link up with Howard if you possibly can. Once again, Howard, thank you so much for joining today. I hope everybody enjoyed. Please reach out to Howard if you guys have any questions, and we will see you guys on the next podcast. Thank you, Howard.
Thank you.